Hello and welcome to the Sacred Rainbow Warrior. My name is Alistair McLean of the Clan McLean, and my clan motto is "Virtue is mine honor," which translates to "I live by my integrity." Today I'm talking about surrendering to the feminine in divine union and healing the war between man and woman. So today's a very reverent video. How am I able to speak as a pure masculine? I talk about the masculine, me surrendering to the feminine. And the reason I'm able to talk about that is because I've lived and embodied this journey because I surrendered to the feminine. I listened deeply to my heart and to her heart. And even when I didn't understand, I just sat there and I listened and I asked questions and I just kept on listening. This meant that all of the teachings were able to come through because they can only come through in reverence and surrender. That doesn't mean I received all the answers from a woman. It just means I'm able to understand the feminine energy and the wisdom, and therefore understand my own true purpose as a pure man. When we met, we bounced our own truths between each other from that of the masculine in union with the feminine. We found answers that we never dreamed of, and we began to understand we were mirrors reflecting back to each other that which we couldn't see in ourselves. That is divine union. So there would be times when I would say to my partner Hazel, "You're not listening to me," which I would then reflect back to myself later, realize it was a projection onto Hazel that translated back to me not listening to my feminine inside, my gentleness, my shadow, my creativity. Because she's my mirror and I can bounce those things off her. That's what living in divine union is, yeah, which I wasn't aware of at the time. And then that helped me own them and take responsibility for them and allow that part of my ego to die. Now, because man and women are not aware they are mirrors, well, most of us, not, yeah. So because we're not aware that they're mirrors of each other, that display and explode our own their own distortions. And so most couples enter into arguments, fighting, and miscommunication being a big one. And it's what causes the distortions of patriarchy, society, war, and so much more. When I talk a lot about narcissism, it's a really difficult concept to understand when you don't really take responsibility for it in yourself. So when a narcissistic man says to his partner, "Stop putting weight on," for example, it's a big one. "Stop putting weight on. I don't like it." Why do you think then that women put on weight in the first place? It's an unconscious protection mechanism. Women hold deep sacred power, and what better way to protect it than to make herself look ugly in the eyes of her abuser? It protects the hidden wisdom. Um, that's how it works. I'm able to decode consciousness through the constellation of consciousness, a bit like a sailor. They use the sextant to look at the stars because I don't know how I learned to do that, but that's how I do it. And so I'm able to decode consciousness because I'm able to look at those distortions. I purified them from my mind, my body, and my spirit, and I apply them to any given situation to find the antidote. The example I just gave you of a narcissistic man telling his girlfriend to stop putting weight on, that was me. I admit that in the past I was, that's my journey about curing narcissism. I had to look at myself so deeply and I had to take responsibility for those things, all those horrible things I said. And to be able to sit in front of a woman as strong as Hazel, to be able to hold that and vice versa is just magic. Each day, in previous relationships, each day I would come home and sometimes I would just have narcissistic outbursts and it was really overwhelming and extremely destructive. But on my journey of healing, each day I would come home and I'd find ways to look at myself to cure my narcissism because it was driving me crazy. Some days I would come home and say you're beautiful. Next day I would say you're fat. Next day it would be I don't want to be near you, and then finally the day after it would be I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. And this cycle would repeat because I was in the cycle of narcissism, the cycle of avoidance of my own heart. And I spoke about this in a previous video. The cycle of narcissism is number one, idealize. So, wow, you're amazing. Number two, devalue. You shouldn't be wearing that. Number three, I don't like you anymore. Number four, I'm sorry I said all those things. Please come back to me, and then repeat. And you can apply that to any situation. Our society is narcissistic, so you can apply it to how, like, I'll give you a really funny one. There's a supermarket in England called Tesco, and they got caught selling horse meat. Seriously, yeah. And you can see that in their marketing. They afterwards they were doing all this hoovering to get their customers back, and it applies in all relationships, all of them, and especially with parenting and families. Um, it's extremely interesting when you delve deep into it. Fighting against my own shame took me to the edge, and it wasn't until I started afresh and removed myself from all toxicities in my life that I was able to meet my partner, Hazel. I removed toxic friends, I removed toxic habits, and I started listening and taking responsibility for the abuse I was giving and acknowledging the abuse I was receiving. For we are all abusers and the abused, and abused become abusers. So for people who point a finger at narcissists, bear that in mind. When I looked at all of these impurities inside of me, I started to attain a higher learning and higher consciousness because it created space inside me for the light to shine, so that my more of my soul could come in, more walk-ins. So the more walk-ins you get, the more you become who you're supposed to be, or yeah, the more of who you truly are. And when this happened, hidden and unaware gifts I never knew I had started to become available to me. And one of them was that I was able to find a cure to any thread of consciousness. I mean, I even tried it out on a wall. I did. I tried it on a wall, a brick wall. And I realized that in other invisible dimensions, walls are actually windows that allow spirit to watch you. It might sound far-fetched to you, but when you purify your consciousness, to such a high level, you attain a higher understanding. Like I tell you a really funny one. Yesterday I was brushing my teeth and I could hear, I shit you not, I could hear the brush brushing away any horrible words that I'd said. It's crazy. That's how devoted I am. That's how much detail and devotion I go into purification. So back to my story. Everything I ever knew when I was going through this showed itself as a lie. Everything. And the truth was revealed because the veil was lifted. And there's a lot of talk about this, especially in the spiritual community, about the veil, the apocalypse. And in Latin, the word apocalypse means the lifting of the veil, the unveiling, and it's the exposure of truth and the beauty and the destruction of the old lie. This is what humanity is going through. I mean, it's already happened, but you know, all the old stuff is crumbling now. And when I embodied this, it was the apocalypse within me, the death of the old me, allowing me to fulfill my cycle of rebirth. You know, in the New Age hippie communities, they used to talk about being born again. Well, this is it. It's the pure, unadulterated, non-distorted version of it, the true path of ascension. And this reverberates out into the collective on all three lines of consciousness, you, me, and us. So the that apocalypse happens on Earth too, as I said. So she, when I say she, I mean the feminine, yes, but I also mean Gaia. She will be reborn and her old version will die. This is what's going on with Hazel, my partner. She's going through that as well. But in order to do that, she must shake it off. So I'm talking about Gaia now, shake it off and explode, just as we have done. So explosion could be an orgasm. It could also be an eruption of anger through the feeling of betrayal and injustice. And this isn't just one, one or two. This goes on multiple times, and this has been happening since the 80s, and the earthquakes have been getting stronger and stronger, and the weather events have been getting stranger and stranger. And yes, there's been manipulations, but also there's a natural process, a natural cycle that's happening. And so these gifts that we talk about are shown in our stories, our movies, our cartoons, our comics. So when I mean these gifts, like the X-Men, for example, these soul gifts that we've forgotten we had that were taken away from us because of the density and the manipulation and the feeding that happened to us. And the only reason we have not had access to them until now was due to that density of distortion caused by the karmic distortions of humanity, which go back to, well, Garden of Eden, let's say. But the truth is far more horrifying than eating a poisoned apple or getting a telling off from God. I mean, The Matrix is a bit, the movie is a bit like a documentary, but it's much worse than that. I don't really go into detail about it because it's horrifying. But the process of purification does require the grieving of that loss, and it can be really profound because the more deeper you go into grieving, the more your heart starts to expand. And if your heart expands, love consciousness expands. So your consciousness expands, and it's absolutely wild. It's really good fun. So, what are the differences between men and women? The feminine is a human body different to man in many ways. This may seem obvious, yes, but today I'm not talking about the physical difference, talking about the spiritual differences. And I always say this to men and in my journey that women are more spiritually advanced as a default, not in total, which means man can catch up. And I've just done a video about where are the men turning up, so tune into that. The main difference between men and women physically is that women can create life. They have a womb. This is a big thing, creation. And in metaphorical terms, this is like the cauldron of creation. This is where witches make their broth, where the creations of her life are fertilized. The womb isn't just for housing and giving birth to children. It's a multi-dimensional portal of creation. Ideas come from the energy and color of creation, which is the orange, the sacral chakra, the water chakra, the energy of life force, and sacred sexuality, or as many call it, tantra. The other difference is the energy of women is magnetic, just like Gaia. Men are more of a charge, a static charge, a bit like rubbing a balloon on your hair and then it sticks. I'm very sticky. Love sticks to me. And her magnetic fields pull in asteroids and objects from the outer reaches of space, the atmosphere, and pull them down to Earth. This is the true essence of the feminine, pulling in to be grounded in her body and to attract the energies that to help her create life. The other energy of the feminine is the chalice energy or the Holy Grail. See my video on Holy Grail. And Hazel's actually doing a course called the Chalice, and I couldn't have received the Holy Grail without doing all that work with Hazel. So yeah, the Holy Grail, the holding of magical spiritual energy. This is the metaphor of the womb, the healing of creation, the womb of creation. And there is a healing. I couldn't have received the Holy Grail without healing the wounds that is linked to that, which has took me a lot of devotion to the feminine, and this is what this video is about. A huge amount of devotion, devotion to the goddess, and not just in this lifetime. I learned that akashically that I've always trained mostly in devotion to the goddess through sacrifice. Anyway, as women hold such a higher energy of creativity, life, and sexuality, along with the fact that women are naturally magnetic, this causes a pulling sensation energetically towards the masculine. But due to the distorted penetration of the feminine, this has caused a distortion in the feminine form to abuse this magnetism. Now, I've seen this akashically. Yes, there's penetration, but there was also the feminine, the toxic matriarchy played their part. And this isn't a blame game. This is just what I saw is the the feminine was so infuriated, so upset, so just, beyond the word anger, complete and utter wrath, just so upset about the sacrilege and degradation of the of sacred feminine heritage, that they wanted revenge, they wanted vengeance. And I saw that the feminine, just like the masculine, because the masculine was pure at some stage as well. We're talking about external influences on humanity. The feminine took her vengeance by drinking the blood of the masculine to a bit like becoming a vampire. To in order to beat a vampire. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you want to beat something, you have to learn how it works, and that's the process that I went through in order to beat narcissism. I became a narcissist. That's kind of the same way in which feminine did it, but in a different way. So I've seen this through my partner Hazel, and that's pretty advanced. This shows in the feminine in so many different ways, but the greatest one is giving herself away. The man pounces on this and calls her used, cheap, soiled, dirty, damaged, tainted, and depraved, unfit for love. And then the man says the woman brought it upon herself, and this goes back to the being devalued and discarded in the cycle of narcissism. Um, is that true when it is the man who has given up his role as protector? I always say this is such a big one, such a big one. When men say they're protecting you, I've had friends and family say, "Oh, I was protecting you," but they didn't protect them. They didn't protect me from myself, and this from themselves. And th this is what I'm saying. That men can say that they're protecting women, but are they protecting women from themselves? And this is how narcissism works. It's how the feminine is targeted. It's targeted through the masculine. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult for the masculine. I had to go through this to cure narcissism takes an enormous amount of sacrifice and it's extremely difficult. I remember I used to, in a previous relationship, I used to come home and I would say horrible things to her and she would, she would say, she would say something like, instead of getting really angry, she would say, "It's okay, it's okay." And I would just drop to my knees and break down, saying, "I'm sorry, I can't help it. I don't know what's happening to me." I was just switching on and off, and it was like this bipolar energy of narcissism. One minute I'd be happy, and next minute it's like, "Oh, you're this, you're that, you're that," and it was driving me nuts. And so a lot of men have to go through this. So I have a lot of compassion for people who are going through abuse, but also responsibility has to be taken, and that's what I did. And it's our job as men to protect and forgive women because they have their own process of narcissism, and we have to allow them to bloom and grow. And that's very difficult when there's this mother wound, which I cleared through the Holy Grail. They are creators, women are creators, and without women, we can't create the new earth, the new way of life that is beckoning. And it's it's really profound how women are not seen by the masculine. It's so profound. It's so interesting. And I'm trying to really get that out there. I'm trying to get that out from a masculine point of view, how the feminine is seen. I mean, I see the feminine in such a way that even the feminine doesn't see herself in that way. And so it's really beautiful that I can come from this place to show reverence to the feminine. And I truly hope, in some way, my partner will do that for the masculine, because there are parts of myself that I don't see. Men hold a different energy than women, obviously, yes. They hold an energy of charge and penetration, and you can see this throughout nature, even in the universe. When I first met Hazel, she showed me her art of divine union, and it was this penetration of the Milky Way. I know, and I'm going to talk a bit into sexuality. I know it sounds horrible, but it's true that when a man of destruction, a man of ill intent, so a narcissistic man penetrates a woman, he's passing his distorted seed into that woman, and that continues the cycle. So a man says, "Well, the woman should have stopped him," in this distorted society of toxic masculinity. A man will say, "Well, the woman should have said no," but come on, come on, come on. How many weapons, how many different weapons does a narcissist use to get a woman into bed? How many different avenues of manipulation and control has man used to have his way with a woman? And if you're a man watching this, if you can honestly answer that truthfully then I do not have to answer that question. I had to look at that within myself, and it's coercion. It's coercion, and I've done a lot of work on the energies of rape, and a lot actually, a lot. And what comes up for me is this time 5 years ago in 2020 in the leap year. I was in the jungle in a dieta taking ayahuasca, and I got this vision of my partner being raped. And it took me months to understand what the vision meant. And it was about the raping of Gaia, what we're doing to her planet. But it was such a big vision, I couldn't contain it in my body. It was really, really rough. And it showed me how sensitive the sexual relationships, physical sexual relationships between men and women are, because because sexuality is having making love is sacred, and if it happens through coercion or any kind of distorted energy, and that can come through feminine energy as well through her own wounding, then that can cause all sorts of trouble. Um, But back to the story, over the ages, the distortion of men, yes, it is men. We will come on to the distortions of women later. I know we're talking a lot about men here, but first and foremostly, it is men that have caused so much destruction, so much misogyny, slavery, and control. It originates from this difference in energy between us, the pull and the pushing and pulling of the feminine energy, like the moon, the pushing and pulling of the tides, the waves, and the build-up of charge from the masculine energy with the intention of penetration, like the sun penetrates the atmosphere with its rays. Over the energies, this energy of penetration has caused war because man has lost the way of sacred sexuality in divine union with a woman. And this is due to the loss of our heritage. And I talk about this a lot, and it's in my book, my plant medicine integration book, which I'm nearly finished. When a man is pulled into a woman's magnetic attraction and he is sexually charged, he is unaware that the sexual life force he is holding is for his own creative needs, not for pumping out, for lack of a better term, every time he feels the urge. So, in my own humble opinion, man has forgotten how to make love to himself, because I know I had. And my partner Hazel was taught me how to guided me how to do that. I had to find my own way, but she guided me how to do that, and it's profound. It's really profound. So as humans, we've really forgotten what true tantric practice is and the potential of self-healing through sexual healing. Like the tantra that's out there at the moment is extremely toxic. There's a lot of hidden distortion there. But I've never met a tantra teacher that's living in divine union, and that means there's a problem. Tantra shouldn't be performed in groups, in my humble opinion. It's like I talk about medicine in groups, charlatan shamans, that video. It shouldn't be performed in groups because it's too sacred, and there's too many distortions flying around. And I mean by this the tantra that emerges from the deep within you, and when you've done enough work to clear yourself of the distortions of sexual lust and desire, that can open up some really pure and profound life force energy. But on the other hand, for men, is it really sex that most offends the man when it comes to women? Because let's face it, isn't it true that, in this distorted patriarchy, toxic masculinity, um, and in all the stories and in some, a lot of religions, men want a virgin because, and it's because of this sexual perversion. If of the feminine, if she isn't a virgin, she isn't pure and worthy, right? It's It's a very old landscape, which is thankfully is dying. It's dying. It's like trying to flog a dead horse. It's pretty much dead. And the kind of men that hold on to that mentality, well, they're not going to ascend, and they're not going to be able to cross the bridge into the new earth. And I have a lot of compassion for how that's going to pan out. I'm not looking forward to it for those people, but we've got to ask ourselves how have we got ourselves into such a distortion of what is in essence so pure and sacred? Where is the alignment between the distortions that throw us off balance and into unhealthy relating? Where is the alignment between the holy, clean, chastised and the dark, lustful, perverse? So when an unconscious man is not able to find a woman who is pure in his eyes and he doesn't get control over her, he starts to destroy because he puts the value and worth of the woman above his own. Again, I talk about this in mirror work, and this causes the man deep shame because he wants to feel like an equal. And women have a tendency to make men feel unworthy when they don't want to make love with them. And this isn't the fault of the feminine. This is due to them mirroring to the masculine the feminine wound, the mother wound of abandonment. So then he targets the feminine narcissistically to bring her beneath him physically and emotionally. This is why, like I spoke about this earlier, that the feminine is more powerful naturally, spiritually, right? And so that's why men have such an issue with women. It's this grandiose narcissism. Instead of looking up to each other, we try to look down on each other so that we don't feel insecure. So there's so much profound wisdom around narcissism. A lot of people don't like to hear the word, but I dive in deep because if wisdom is healing, if you can understand it, you can change everything. And this is what I'm doing. It's freaking incredible. And I have to create a course on this so that people understand it because it's so profound. I'm taking it, beyond psychology. Psychology isn't study of the mind. Psyche means soul. I mean, you only have to read the Greek stories of Cupid and Psyche to understand that. It's about the study of the soul. And psychedelic means to reveal the soul. This is why I do plant medicine integration services. So, in the act of sacred sexuality of true tantra, before the sacred act of sex, a man must first surrender to the feminine. He must surrender all his desires, lust, manipulation, power, and darkness, for that is what causes the war. And if a woman allows that into her body, she supports that destruction. Hence, why we have women who hold on to the energy of war and masculinity through their own masculine. So, when man and women truly come together, they can become two hearts living in just one mind. Two hearts. Yes, that song. When does the war stop and the love begin? Okay, so we're always searching for elevation, always searching for answers. So where does the war stop and love and understanding begin? It begins when the man surrenders first. Yes, yes. How many men have you met that do that? I've met one, me. Ha! It begins when man surrenders first, yes, and foremost in reverence to the power of the feminine. The power of the feminine is not physical in nature, but spiritual. It is beyond the comprehension of the unconscious man before it, for it's only when you surrender and deeply listen that you can understand the entirety of creation because it's multidimensional. And I talk about this a lot. Logic and control is to do with science because logic is trying to prove that the universe exists, right? And so logic is the mind going, okay, I know this much, I know this much, right? And so man tries to know the feminine, but you can't know all of creation if you're ignorant to the fact that you already know. It's hilarious. And knowing is different to wisdom, and wisdom is love. So you can see how this war between the feminine and masculine echoes out into the world. If you look at the war in Russia and Ukraine, it's essentially two boys playing with their toys. One boy gets upset, he has more friends and wants to feel more important, so they start throwing their toys at each other, and this causes a nasty energy in the room, and then the mother comes in to calm them down. And that'll be Gaia. She goes, However, the mothers have gone. So it's the partners who support them, the women in their lives who support the war. This also needs to end. Women must stop defending and supporting the war within themselves and their partners. I see this a lot in nice women, and this is covert narcissism, where being nice when they want to speak up and say no is actually a lie. It's a lie. We just sort the camera out. And so, however, behind that war is the true war of the feminine. I saw this in ceremony a few years ago. It's the raging destruction of artillery and bombs destroying nature, the nature of Gaia. This is the true war. It really is masculine versus feminine. And I had a comment on my one of my videos saying that there isn't really a war between masculine and feminine. That unfortunately that is ignorance because it's there. You just you're not aware of it. There are invisible hands unguiding the unconscious man to destroy nature for profit. This is what's being ignored. This is the greatest distortion of humanity, ignorance. And I talk about this on my podcast, He Lives, the stag. I'm sure you've heard the dad joke. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea. And it's about the stag turning a blind eye. It's about ignorance. And I learned that through the spirit of Pan. And Pan is the spirit of nature, the nature of mankind. And he is half man, half stag in many visions. Okay, so it's the woman's fault. Is it now? Some of the comments that I've had, especially when I put up videos about toxic masculinity, are what about the women? So, um, yeah, comments like women bring it on themselves. How many times have you seen that on the internet? Or women are narcissists too? Yes, of course. We are well aware that women are not perfect, but to say women bring it upon themselves is completely ignorant. The truth is, both sides need to take responsibility, but there is a responsibility and purpose intertwined into this war because purpose is being forgotten and ignored, and it is the responsibility of the masculine to protect the feminine, and he must protect the feminine from himself first and foremost. So yes, the man must first must first say, "I have been lying and wish to atone and take responsibility for my lies. Will you forgive me? Namaste." Then the woman says, "Thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your shame of lying. I too have lied and have shame. Will you forgive me? Namaste." This is how I did it with Hazel. And it's beautiful because when you work like that, you can work through anything, and there's no need for separation, and any relationship can last forever. Ka-ching. It's only in holding sacred space for each other that the division and separation between man and woman can be healed. And when that happens, the whole world will heal. And a new wave of consciousness that everybody is waiting for and discussing will open the rainbow bridge to new earth. For it is already here, you just need a pure heart to access it. And this is why so much devotion to purification in the heart. This is why I've done so well in ascending and why I was able to receive the Holy Grail. I did a video for you. I did a video for you all about it. The the freaking planetary alignment. It's so big. It's so big. Pay attention to it. It's so big. Oh, that rainbow bridge isn't about unicorns or your sexuality. I've done videos on this, but it is the collective expression of the unity of consciousness within the human body. It's all the chakras in alignment, in alignment, purified in the presence of color and so much more. I am such a fan of color. My channel is not called a Sacred Rainbow Warrior because I think I'm a warrior who wants to fight and I love rainbows. It's this discovery of the true journey of man. It's the purification of the warrior through the color of his own love. And the word fight is to fight and stand for love. It is the prophecy of what will come to pass. It is the legend of unity. So, any questions, put them in the comments. I want to hear people's comments on this about surrendering to the feminine. I know this is a big one. I know this is a big one. Please speak up. Please don't stay silent. Please, I need people to interact with me. Please, please. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.